When you hear about the vampire myths of days of old, they're tied back to this disease, and it all is rooted in corn and the eating of cornmeal in particular, which is what we're cooking today. Out on a homestead back in the Old West, you had to make do with little bits of food that were very shelf stable and relatively inexpensive. That's what we're cooking up on the wood stove today. 2 simple foods that fed a lot of people. A classic homesteader meal. This is the food that people would have eaten day in and day out. The pioneer staple of bacon and a very, very old recipe for cornbread. But not just any cornbread, because this one uses 0 wheat flour. This is a cornbread truly of the Americas, 100% stone ground cornmeal. When early settlers came to America, they had never encountered this food before, and it was because of the Native Americans that they developed a taste for it. And before long, corn was being shipped all over the world, but it was often being shipped without the knowledge of how to cook it. Well, this led to a rash of problems in settlers and people all the way across the ocean. You get a disease where if you go out into the sunlight, you will almost instantly burn. You'll turn red, your skin will peel. It's a horrible, horrible disease. So a significant amount of people started to have this happen to them, which was specifically because of eating cornmeal and eating a lot of cornmeal. And so they would cover from head to toe, or they would stop going outside at all. And at this same point, you start to get the vampire myths, the myths of people pale, covered, only going out at night. It's an interesting connection back to this new world and a food like corn, where people began to eat it, but they didn't understand it. Native Americans knew that you had to do a breakdown of that cornmeal before you ate it. Now, I just learned this week from a Native American chef. I went to a cooking class that she taught, and she talked about a disease called pellagra. Early white settlers and people in Italy, England, all across Europe, they swapped a significant amount of their diet from wheat to corn. Well, when they did that, what they didn't know is that we get a lot of our vitamins from wheat, in particular a vitamin called niacin. Now, corn on paper has a lot of those same vitamins and minerals. It has niacin, but your body cannot digest corn and access that niacin, not unless it goes through a prior bath in lye. And that's something Native American people understood, and they would treat their corn in a lye solution prior to cooking. But early settlers and people elsewhere didn't do that. And when you don't get niacin and you replace a huge amount of your diet with a food like corn, you are gonna start to get some very unusual symptoms. And I'm sure quite a bit of that happened out here too, because corn was a more cost-effective food. It was grown in the South. It wasn't grown particularly well in Montana, but in the South it was grown well, and it could be shipped all the way up here into places like the West. And we know that it was. And people ate it, especially poor people. But it was something you had to be very, very careful about eating, because if you replace too much of your diet with cornmeal, well, I'm not saying you become a vampire, but it was the dawning of a new age in food. One where, even today, we see that half the foods eaten around the world have actually originated in the Americas. And there have been good side effects from that, but also some bad ones. Today's meal highlights a bit of both. It has probably kept thousands upon thousands of people alive. It's good old bacon and cornbread. Okay, just a little interesting aside about cornmeal that I learned this week that totally blew my mind. Now, in the true pioneer spirit, this is just raw, coarse ground cornmeal. We found at our Pioneer Days Adventures summer festival. And so it is not treated with lye. It is your rough and ready dent corn that's been ground up into a pretty coarse grind. Almost an unedible grind. So we're gonna see if boiled milk, eggs can do anything to make that palatable, because that's a pretty hard trick. You're not gonna find many recipes like this today. But this one made it into our old cookbook, so it must at least be decent, because somebody put their name to this and they were proud to share it. Let's get into it. First things first, scalding milk on the stove. And into that milk, we're gonna add our cornmeal because this, remember, this is a very coarse grind and it's gonna need that time, that heat, and that liquid to absorb into it and take away some of the toothiness. Otherwise, you're gonna crack your teeth on this. So this recipe is old, no doubt passed down for many generations before it ever made it into this cookbook. There are actually quite a few recipes for cornbread in this small cookbook, which is a testament to how often it must have been eaten here in Montana. But this recipe we're making today is undoubtedly the oldest one. I know that because it lacks one thing that all the others have: chemical leavening. No baking soda, no baking powder. Now in a homestead shack out here in late 1800s Montana, you could get those ingredients without that much trouble. But like anything, baking soda and baking powder cost money. You didn't make them yourself. You didn't grow them yourself. So this recipe today is a common family's food. It calls for milk, eggs, coarse cornmeal, and a pinch of salt. Now I'm gonna splash in a tablespoon of molasses because I've learned enough to know that this is very spot on for the times. But aside from no baking powder, there's another huge missing actor in this, and that's wheat flour. Wheat was often so valuable that it was sold rather than eaten. So this food is proof of what you can make with just pure, humble corn that probably came up here on a railroad. 3 cups of whole milk is getting hot on the cooktop. Into that, I have about 1.5 cups of coarse cornmeal, ready to be poured in as soon as that milk is scalded. I slightly reduced the amounts of what the cookbook called for, simply because that's what fit in our pots. It is officially the first really freezing day of the cabin out here. We're sneaking into November and there's ice frozen on the steps and everything in here is just bone-chillingly cold. So, first steps, getting that stove going, getting it warming up, getting our fingertips warm again, because it's pretty impossible to cook when you can't feel your fingers. Today we need both the cooktop for scalding the milk and the oven for baking the cornbread. This recipe says, boil 1 quart milk, stir into it on stove 2 scant cups cornmeal. Remove from stove and beat into it 4 eggs beaten separately and 1 teaspoon salt. Bake in buttered baking dish 30 minutes in hot oven. Miss Louise Schroeder. A cookstove like this was a luxury that just a generation before would have been something to kill for. Back when cooking was done in the fireplace or outdoors over the fire, this stove was the technological leap of its day. With the milk having just hit a boil, I've flipped the oven on. That's what that iron lever does. It opens a vent down low in the stove, pulling and wrapping the flames around the sides of the oven. In a flash, that oven will be hot, but we have a couple of steps to do to get ready for that. The cornmeal goes into the scalded milk, stirred into it, thickening rapidly, almost like a chunky cream of wheat. Then it's just a tablespoon of molasses that needs to go in. I've been storing the molasses up high on the cookstove for a very foreknowable reason, because molasses is just about as slow as a window pane of old glass when it's cold out. Getting it even slightly warmed means that eventually I can pour it. Go on outside, it's really nice. Put any jackets on you need and go on out. Okay, go on. Bye guys. Bye guys. Oh, this is really coming together. It is a thick, porridgey mass. And the milk, that little bit of molasses, I took the liberty to add it because molasses and cornbread, they go together really well. And you'll see that in a lot of old recipes. The recipe in this old cookbook, it is very simple, and you can tell that it's from a much older time because there's no chemical leavening in this. It relies on whipping the eggs into this batter, but I need to let this cool just a little bit. I'm gonna make sure everything's mixed and incorporated, and then I want to whip those eggs separately and fold them in. Because those eggs are the only thing that will give this cornbread any lightness. Otherwise, it's gonna be fairly dense. And that's how traditional old cornbreads or corn pones were. They were made in the ashes of fires. This, at its root, is a Native American food. Cornmeal, milk, eggs, stewed in a pot on the stove, and of course, the homesteader staple of bacon. While we were scalding that milk earlier, I grabbed a cast iron skillet off the wall, one of my larger ones. It's got a dual purpose today. First, to sear our bacon, but second, to be a pan for cornbread. There's some great modern cast iron out there, but if you ask me, nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, beats old cast iron, the kind our great-grandmothers had. It's so thin and so smooth. I've had this one for a number of years, and I think it's gonna be perfect for our cornbread today. But we need to get it gently warming up because this old stuff can be a tiny bit brittle. So if I take it from a frozen wall and plop it directly onto a super hot cook stove, it can crack on me. So I gotta ease it into this. I put it up top first. Oh, okay, that bacon is getting smoky and releasing all the extra lard, and that is gonna be exactly what we need for this cornbread. Bitten everywhere. Because we are going to bake it in the skillet in the oven. So as soon as I have the eggs mixed into the cornmeal and milk, I'm going to pull out this bacon, and all that bacon grease is going to not just add flavor to the cornbread, but prevent it from sticking, because there was no nonstick cookware back on the prairie in the homestead era.
I love you, Mom.
I love you, Georgie. Mwah. I love you. I can tell you this whole house smells spectacular right now. It might be a little smoky, but on a cold day approaching lunchtime, yeah, it's pretty good. All right, big guy. Let's pull that bacon.
Whoa.
Into the upper warming oven of the cook stove goes the bacon. It will stay crisp and hot up there while our cornbread bakes in the oven. Now we left all that piping hot bacon grease in the cast iron pan. For one, to prevent sticking, but for two, because this cornbread has no other real fat added to it. So that bacon grease is gonna add flavor and moisture in a heavenly way. It's almost fried and baked at the same time. Are you the coldest, George, or is Maggie the coldest? Go. Into a very hot oven goes the cornbread. Almost a little bit too hot, but that's gonna be okay. I put it on the bottom of the oven first, which is the cooler part, and then I'm gonna move it to the top rack in a little bit. These old ovens, it's all about rotating and sliding your foods to the sweet spot. When you think about it, most days were spent not with creative cooking, not with a lot of variation, but with staples. Staples that you knew how to make, you could throw on the cook stove, and in a fairly short period of time, you could have a hearty meal that would stick with you all day, especially in freezing temperatures. Okay, Mags, I don't have any clippers, but I'm gonna give you this very sharp knife, but I'm serious, it's sharp. Please be careful, okay? Often you didn't have access to very many fruits and vegetables. You didn't have access to a lot of variety of meat. Now, maybe this time of year you were out and you were hunting and you had success, but maybe you didn't. And that's where today's meal comes into play. This is a recipe with no wheat flour, just cheap and affordable corn. And you don't see those recipes very often. Sometimes for a good reason, but we're gonna test it today and see how palatable is this food of the poor, food of the common man. Could you whip this up for your lunch out here in a pioneer cabin and be satisfied for the rest of the work you had to do that day? Let's let the test begin. Oh, look at that. Straight off the bat, you can see the bacon grease crisped up the edges and the bottom of the cornbread really brilliantly. But it's also good to note that nothing burned, just a rich golden color. And of course, we didn't let anything cool. There's too many hungry people waiting at the table. But even being cut immediately, this held together very well. Spirit, amen. I'm pleased that it held together. It's pretty corny.
It's pretty corny.
How's the texture? For as coarse as the cornmeal was ground, well, it looks very palatable. But the taste testers have the final say.
Can I have one of those pieces too?
Hey, Minnow, can I try a bite of yours?
The taste of this is like if you took a piece of bread and wrapped it around a corn cob. And you ate it. So it's pretty rough. It tastes like corn, but it's got some fluff to it.
Is it a compliment?
Yeah.
Texture-wise, it cut.
No, it is. I mean, it looks great, but when you chew on it, it's kind of like a...
It's got some tooth to it.
Yeah. So I think they could have ground it a little bit finer.
Is that a compliment?
No, it's an accurate representation of the current situation.
It's a backhanded compliment. Wheat flour really does work magic when it comes to cakes and breads. But for having no wheat flour, this is a very good food. All that said, there's a reason why we add baking powder and wheat flour, white flour, all of those things to modern cornbread, and a lot of sugar. This actually didn't call for any sugar. It feels very substantial. It's going to leave you satisfied after a meal. And that little addition of bacon, boy, I'm not hearing that many complaints. Well, there you have it. A meal fit for a king, albeit a humble one. The kids pretty well polished theirs off, and the final verdict? Toothy, but a real taste of history that you won't find on any menu today. With the crunch of the bacon, well, it was all happy smiles, and now it's back to work. There's lots of grain to store and clean because we want to eat wheat flour this winter, not straight corn. But talk about a food that changed history. Corn from the Americas. It was a revolution to the world. A little piece of history that had far and wide-ranging implications, not just in America, not just for settlers, but for people all over the world. A humble homesteader's meal. So thanks for coming along, cooking in the cabin, and we will hope to see you next week out here in the middle of Montana. Cheers, you guys.